This movie is just a perfect example of a feel-good movie. What's up, everybody? So this is my old school review of Summer School, directed by Reiner, starring Mark Harmon and Kirstie. Now, this is one of those, I guess you can call it, inspirational teacher movies, and I think when you have those kinds of movies that are not heavy on the drama, this one is more of a kind of screwball comedy in the mold of Police Academy, but it has a little bit more heart to it. You know, it has a little bit more of a character arc for not only Mark Harmon's character, Freddy Shoop, but also the students that he's teaching. You know, every single one of them is a different person by the end in some way, shape, or form, some big and some smaller, uh, which is not an easy thing to do because it's very much an ensemble cast with Mark Harmon leading the way, but it can't just be him because he's working with these students. You know, the premise of the movie is basically the character of Freddy Shoop, a screwball PE teacher who is forced to teach summer school for, you know, a bunch of the high school misfits, you know, the remedial English class. And they all have to pass a proficiency test at the end. Now, at first, he doesn't take it seriously. He does everything he possibly can to not do it because he doesn't really know how. He starts with like, all right, let's waste some time, and you know, they photocopy a bunch of field trip forms, and then they go to the amusement park, they go to the zoo, they just do everything except learn anything about English. Eventually, he decides, all right, I'm gonna teach these kids, but they won't listen, so they bribe him basically. It's like, all right, we will work and learn, but you have to do something for us. And that's everything from driving lessons to going to Lamaze classes because one of his students is pregnant, to screening in class of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he even lets one of his students live in his house. Now, the thing about this movie really has to do with, one, Mark Harmon's portrayal of Freddy Shoop. He never condescends to the students. He never looks down on them, you know, and whereas maybe if a different actor, maybe like a Bill Murray or even a Steve Guttenberg would have played this role, I could see them adding that kind of snarkiness to that role. Whereas he's really kind of on this journey because his students are learning English and he is learning how to teach. And so they're both kind of along with each other on kind of the same journey, you know, and which I think is what makes it endearing. And I think why it still holds up. It doesn't really feel like an 80s comedy. It's definitely a comedy within the 80s. You know, you see whether it's the fashion trend, whether it's the slang, whether it's some of the conventions that are within the movie. But you can watch it today and still be charmed and still laugh and still, you know, enjoy yourself and then take something away from it. Spoilers, the end of the movie is probably, it's weird because it's not like a Rocky movie where you know, Rocky loses, but he still wins. He's still kind of triumphant in his own way. Not all of the students pass the test, but that's not really what the thing to focus on is. In the movie, there's the antagonist, kind of like the principal who, you know, really just wants Mark Harmon's characters to just babysit them, and if they fail, they fail. You know, he has no hope in these students, but Mark Harmon does. And so when he says like, no, you're gonna get fired because none of these students, like not all of them passed, and so you don't get, I don't know, maybe your bonus or something like that. That part always I kind of just glossed over. But then he's looking at the results and he's like, wait, actually, that's not true. And then he goes through each one of the students and what they scored before they took the class and they did a version of the exam, and then how much they improved. And every single one of them improved. So what he's trying to say is like, focus on the process. Like, it's not the result necessarily where you passed, but you all put in effort and things happened. You did better because of your effort. And I always thought that was something that kind of got lost in the shuffle, where that is the real win, where you put in work and you see the fruits of your labor, and that's always something that I try and um, really hammer home with my own students. Forget the result, focus on the process, and you'll see how things will get better. Anyways, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. If you don't finish this movie without a smile on your face, then I question your humanity. Anyways, those were my thoughts. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.